Kylie Captain, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so
Hello.
much for having a
Oh,
chat to me today. It's lovely to finally get to have this conversation.
absolutely. It's been a while. We've been yarning for a little while offline, so we finally
Yeah,
here, and I'm super excited to yarn with you.
amazing. And I saw you recently at the Redfern markets, and my girls just had the best time. They were running around like they were owning the place and looking at all these beautiful patterns and arts and crafts, and it was really lovely to connect. I walked past your store and didn't notice you. I thought, who's this person selling all of Kylie stuff? And then I realized it was you. So
I
it's
know that was such a nice surprise, actually, because we've only really connected on Instagram and online. You're like, it's me.
yeah,
That was really a nice surprise, actually, and coming along. There's so many amazing things that are out there happening, and I'm going into lots of schools and telling everyone about all the deadly things. Come to
I love
yarn,
it.
come to this, and that, and it was great to see you there.
I
You
love
were
it, and I'm sure.
beautiful.
Yeah, thank you, and I'm sure we'll get into the amazing work that you're doing. And for me, my wife and I we went to university together at University of Sydney, and we used to walk past Everleigh Street every single day. And just the transformation in that area is incredible. It's amazing how a lot of those inner city suburbs now are incredibly expensive
Yeah.
hipster neighborhoods. It's changed so much, hasn't it?
It has, and I still can't believe it. I'm kind of like feeling like yeah, it is a very strange feeling when you've grown
Yeah.
up there. Like I lived there, for the first 20 years of my life, and it was a place that
Yeah.
no one ever wanted to come to. So now you see everyone out in the street, having their little lattes and
Yeah.
smashed avo, and I'm just like, what is going on here? It's a bit of a crazy
Yeah.
thing, but yeah, it's whatever,
It's
times are changing,
interesting.
and it's still always home. It's still a big and vibrant and strong Aboriginal
I love
community.
that. I love that. And quite
People love to
possibly,
go.
yeah, quite possibly the most important question, Kylie, for our conversation. What's your coffee order? Speaking of smashed avo and lattes.
Well, I like a skinny cap usual.
Right.
Yeah, depending on my mood. If I need a little bit of a pick me up, I might add a little bit of sugar, but a skinny cap will do me. Thanks.
Nice one.
Thank you.
Nice one. And a book that you've read could be recently or further along than that has caused you to stop and reconsider a few things in your life.
Firstly, I just want to yeah, it's so many actually. I did see that. I had a quick look at your questions, actually, the book, and I've got one that comes to mind. But before I even get into the yarn, I just want to, it kind of centers and grounds me actually. I'm looking outside here and it's just gone dark, and I just want to acknowledge country as
Of
well.
course.
I know that people will be listening to this
Of
or
course.
watching from many different countries right around our beautiful nation and maybe abroad. But I just want to acknowledge that I am dialing in from beautiful Dharawal country today, and just want to acknowledge my old people and my ancestors, and importantly, the ongoing custodians of this beautiful country. And just for people who haven't met me before, I just want to, introduce myself culturally. I'm a proud Gamilaroi woman. I'm born and raised on Gadigal country, and we just had a quick yarn about Redfern Waterloo, but I know that we'll get into that. But I always, I know that I'll talk a little bit about me, my life, my stories, but just to center and ground me, I just want to down tools and just really just for us to take a moment and just acknowledge country. And wherever you're listening in from as well, I just invite everyone to take a breath and just look around and acknowledge the beautiful country. And if I can sum it up in one word, it's just gratitude.
Love that.
Gratitude. So,
That's so beautiful.
with that being said, the book. Now, there are
Yeah.
many. I love reading. I love learning about people's stories of resilience. I love reading about our histories, our cultures, and probably the one that comes to mind. And I know that there are a lot of Aboriginal authors out there as well, but one that really inspired me was a book by Oprah Winfrey, believe it or not. And she has this most beautiful little book, and it's called What I Know for Sure.
I love that.
And it was an easy read. It was one that I couldn't put down. And it was just about her life. And I just love hearing stories about people's life, which inspired me really to want to go and also write and think, well, what if people were interested in hearing about my life? And I know things as well. And chapter 12 on my very first book is called What I Know for Sure, inspired by the beautiful Oprah. So I always say, whenever I mention her, if you know her or anyone listening, hook a sister up, because I want to meet her one day. So I would say What I Know for Sure by Oprah, but there are many. There are
I love
many.
that. And I don't know if you are listening, Oprah, but if you are, please reach out. It'll be a great
Okay.
podcast episode. So, Kylie, what are some of the things that you know for sure?
What I know for sure is that we live in the most incredible country with
Yeah.
such beautiful and diverse and oh, ancient history and culture and a people that have been around, been the longest living surviving culture in the world. It's a culture of respect. And there's still a long way to go in terms of getting our message out there for all of Australia to really embrace,
Mm.
truth telling. I know that we are the writers of our story and the creators of our dreams. I know that we are all resilient and capable of doing anything we set our minds to. I know that our young people, with the right support around them, can engage in education and choose a life that, that they choose, and
Mm.
I know what I know for sure. There are many things I know for sure, but I guess I'll wrap it up because I like to yarn. I'll say long story short, and then I'll go and tell the longer story. I know that education gives us freedom and choice. And I know that We're Yarning, your podcast is called The Art of Teaching, which I love, by the way. Big fan of
Thank
your
you.
work. So thank you for having me on your Deadly podcast. What I know for sure is that education gives us freedom and choice. And that certainly has been my story in my
Yeah,
case.
I love that. And my girls who you met at the markets, they were crazy and running around the place, are the first kind of Australians in our family. I was born in England, my wife was born in South Africa, and for them to get to grow up in such a beautiful and ancient and wonderful country as a parent is the biggest blessing. And we had a conversation before we hit record about how do we how do we begin to tell those stories? Because we have such a long way to come as such a long way to go as a nation, and so many difficult truths and difficult conversations to have. How do we begin to have those conversations with our little ones? So they grew up with an understanding of Australia, which is much more closer to truth than when I grew up or when you grew up, I'm sure. How do we begin to have those conversations with our little ones?
Just think that we build upon it, and I think a lot of, I work in education, I'm a teacher, I lead a lot of professional learning for our teachers. And I always say that we just have to build upon the knowledge that we're
Mm.
sharing, just to get in early and to start. And I think I think that teachers and educators, a lot of them are a little bit scared, rightly so. It's a big and diverse culture and truth to kind of engage with. But I just think that if it comes from the heart, like to build empathy, like when our teachers, like we're both teachers, but when we're excited and we're passionate about something, that energy is transferred onto our young people and very smart humans as well. And we know, what's right to share with our kids in ways, very, very creative people. So I just think that, I think our curriculum when we talk about Aboriginal education and the ways in which teachers need to have those conversations, I just feel like we don't kind of do it like we would in other subjects in regards to building upon the skills. I just think that we just need to share the truth,
Yeah.
but using our common sense, age and
Yeah.
stage appropriately, starting with, the little things that I
Yeah.
guess the themes around respect and, kindness and
Love that.
gratitude and the importance of country and kinship and highlight all the deadly and wonderful Aboriginal people out there, like just to start to build upon it. And obviously,
Love
when the
that.
time is right, we start to talk to them,
Mm.
around the truth. And like we would in many other situations when we have to have difficult or uncomfortable conversations, we need to have it because what happens is that our children, and I love education because every child has to come into contact with a teacher at some point in their life. We shape their futures. So, but what makes me quite sad is that I meet a lot of professionals, I meet a lot of adults, and they blame the teachers. And I'm always waving the flag for the teachers, going, like our teachers are incredible. They're such hard workers, they're amazing. And it's not their fault. They, a lot of like education has failed so many. So it's just to have the yarns and to get
Mm.
comfortable with the
I love that.
uncomfortable truths and learn with the kids, but just have them. And what you don't know, learn, all
Love
that
that.
good stuff.
It's really beautiful. And my daughter she just had a preschool graduation last week and she did her acknowledgement of country. And I've never been prouder. I mean, she's 5 years old. She stood on top of the slide with a microphone and it was just the most beautiful thing. And I thought, what an incredible privilege to be in an education system that really quite rightly values that. And I think it was so lovely. And she practiced this little speech that went for about 10 seconds for weeks and weeks and weeks. And she was so proud of herself. It was really lovely. Kylie, what was your upbringing like? And what are you most grateful for from your family?
Yeah, so we all have a story.
Oh,
Chapter one in my very first book, I've now written three books, but chapter one and my upbringing, it was great. I've been through some stuff, and people that know my story
yeah.
know about the grief, and I'll touch on it briefly in our yarn. They know about the grief, some of the hard times, but I was a little girl that was born and raised on Gadigal country in
Yeah.
Sydney, and my mum was born and raised on the banks of the Namar River in Walgett. So about
Wow.
9 hours drive from Sydney. My mum and my mum's sister, who later became my mum and my nan, they all lived there, and like many Aboriginal families, moved down to Redfern. A lot of Aboriginal families came from all over and set up home. Thousands of Aboriginal people came to
Wow.
Redfern and Waterloo. And I spent sort of the first 20 years of my life growing up in Housing Commission in Waterloo. Really poor family, like many Aboriginal families, and other ethnicities as well growing up. But I guess my upbringing, it was tough, but I'm a really strong and I'm a strong person, but I'm 44, nearly 44 in February.
Gosh.
I'm a mum of two children, 24 and 20. As we record this, actually, I'm just days away from my son getting married this Saturday,
Oh my
actually.
God.
A teacher, by the way, an English teacher for all the teachers listening, which is a really proud mum moment. But I guess my upbringing, I was a sad little girl. I was a very sad little girl. I lost my mum when I was 3. My family moved from Walgett down to Sydney. But some families came chasing work, escaping the horrible conditions, in those little small country towns. They lived in a little tin shack on the banks of the Namai River. Aboriginal people weren't allowed in pools and pubs. My auntie, who became my mum later on, she was, wasn't allowed to go to school from the age of 11. She was out working on cattle stations for white families. So my family, though, came to Sydney chasing better health care. My mum had rheumatic heart disease and
Gosh.
issues with her valves. And she actually came and she was a patient of the famous Dr. Victor Chang.
Oh, wow.
Sadly, I have a few memories of my beautiful mum, and those that know me, particularly when I go to Walgett and others, they carry on like they're seeing a ghost. I'm like, oh my God, Mila, because apparently I look just like my mum. But sadly, I was only 3, so I was the only child. Mum passed away. Fortunately for me, she had one sister. She had 3 daughters of her own. She was a single mum. She took me and raised me as her own. I had my beautiful nan in my life until I was 16. So I grew up in a household full of girls. So it was me, my auntie, my 3 older sisters, my cousins who became my sisters, and my nan who lived across the road. She was in a wheelchair. She had a horrific upbringing and passed as well, really had a lot of hard times. And I was a little girl that also spent a lot of time in hospital. So as well as the grief, a lot of my early primary years were spent in hospital at the Children's Hospital. I had chronic psoriasis. And I developed this psoriasis when I was about in year 4 or year 5. And whilst it just sounds like a basic skin condition, I had one of the worst cases of psoriasis that they had ever seen. I had specialists would come from all around the world to Sydney just to see my psoriasis. And my mum had never seen psoriasis before. It came from my dad's family, who's a white man. His mob originate from Ireland. And I've never lived with my dad's family. I've always grown up with my Aboriginal culture. When you asked about what I'm so grateful for, just I guess to sum up a little bit of my upbringing, I'm so grateful that I got to stay with my Aboriginal family. And there were child protection things happening in our community. Kids were being removed left, right, and center. Mum, we did it tough, went without a lot of things. I was surrounded. Redfern, Waterloo back then was a really tough time to grow up. Lots of drugs, lots of alcohol, lots of domestic violence. Lots of gaps in my learning. Would spend months in a hospital. My mum had never seen psoriasis before. She used to use Vicks for everything. So she'd try and rub Vicks on things. And anyway, so then I'd be in hospital, and my daily treatments were, like oil baths, tar treatments, ultraviolet lights. And then they'd wrap me up like a mummy. And as you know, kids can be cruel. Some of the other sick kids in hospital who had horrible diseases like tuberculosis, or not tuberculosis. What's that one with their lungs?
Bronchitis.
No bronchitis, and they said do these hard things on their back, like they had lots of
Gosh.
breathing issues and lots of really sick kids. But when kids are in, get a big mob of kids in the hospital when they're all sick and angry. Everyone's, that some of these kids are really cruel. They'd call me names like mummy and freak. You can imagine what that does to your self-esteem as a little girl. And so there were lots of gaps in my learning. Would go back to school really behind. I remember the teacher giving me dot the dots and crossword while everyone else went on with the learning, probably knowing that I wouldn't be there next week because I was a chronic non-attender as well. I'd stay home if we didn't have, I don't know, food, or we'd go to Walgett for funerals and stay there for weeks at a time. So I was that Aboriginal family who would just wasn't going to school. But I guess fast forward to my sadness continued. I always missed my mum, lots of gaps in my learning. Sadly, as a teacher now, I felt like the dumbest kid in the class, really shy. I was this shame little Aboriginal girl. But my high school years were probably the hardest. A lot of my high school years were full of addiction. Sadly, when you don't see success around you, you don't feel like you can aspire to do these things, And I heard about the Aboriginal athletes, the artists, and the footy players, and I didn't know any Aboriginal people that worked. I didn't know any apart from up at the Aboriginal Medical Service or, an AEO at the school. But and naturally surrounded by drugs, alcohol, all that sort of stuff. So I started using that stuff when I was 13. Thought, well, it must be good. Everyone else is just doing this, and made me sick. And I persevered until I mastered it. And before long, I was having an addiction. All of the drug dealers around Redfern and Waterloo, all those ones down Everleigh Street that you would have passed. And everyone knew me as probably about 14, 15, 16 were probably the worst times where I was heavily addicted, would do anything to get my drugs, getting involved in petty crime, getting picked up by the police, stealing, taking my little nieces and nephews, stealing for clothes and socks and jumpers and shoes, and getting caught in Grace Brothers as a 14-year-old with a 2-year-old in the pram. I was trying to pretend that I was his kid's mother, and I was in there in getting caught, stealing. And I went home with no remorse, but so excited that they didn't find all the kids' socks that I had stashed under my arms when they searched me. And that was just my life. It's not something I'm proud of, and it took me a long time to even share that. Even as a professional, I've worked, when I first came into the department, I was the ASLO, so which works with the HISLOs, the Homeschool Liaison Officer program. Surprisingly, I was on that program for a long time. So when I first came into work and I got a job as an ASLO, my ASLO, the one that chased me for many, many, many years, Auntie Janine, she's passed away now, but she couldn't believe it. She cried and go, "Oh my God, little Kylie Captain." She said, "You don't know how many times I came to your house, how many times I tried to get you to come to school." And she was just so proud. But long story short,
Wow.
long story short,
You can take as much time as you need. That's wow.
year 10 was a big year for me where a few things happened, a few light bulb moments, and things started to change. And I realized I had choice, and I had a teacher believe in me. And Dr. Kathy Burgess, I went on and wrote my second book with her. It's called Be That
Yeah.
Teacher Who Makes a Difference and Lead Aboriginal Education for All Students. She's a professor now. She won a big award this year, Teacher
You
Educator of
did.
the Year. She publishes journal articles that go all around the world. Incredible woman. But yeah, she saw me. I used to go to school under the influence. I'd be stoned 2 to 3 days a week, disengaged kid, late all the time. One day there were two things that my school did, and I remember them like they were yesterday. Walking through the school gates, as you do, the teachers have got their little papers. They're always in a hurry, right? They're going from class to class, need to get to the
Always in a
next
hurry.
period, always on the go. But I remember this day like it was yesterday, walking in, and there she was. She hadn't even taught me. She taught my older sisters, and sadly, one of my sisters passed away, Narelle. She was
Gosh.
my role model. She made it to the end of year 10, and Kathy said a couple of things, and it was my first what if moment. And I remember the way that she made me feel. My favorite quote is that one by Maya Angelou, that people will forget what you said,
Yeah.
what you did, all those sorts of things, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And
Love that.
basically just said to me, "Kylie, I can't wait to see you in my ab studies class next year. You're smart, you're deadly, you're going to be amazing." She knew that I was a young Aboriginal girl. And I'm thinking, who's this white woman? She doesn't even know me, and I was just there probably with my, just walking in, getting growled at by the office ladies. "You're late again, Kylie." And I just remember I stopped, and I was always polite. I give myself that. I was never a cheeky kid. I was always polite. "You're smart, you're deadly." And I remember thinking, does she even know who I am? Like, no one had ever used that word smart and deadly in a sentence about me, or you know what I mean? Like, that wasn't me. And I just remember she was so convincing. And I just remember, and I thought to myself,
Beautiful.
what if she was right? And what if I could be the first in my family to get to finish school? My sister Narelle got to the end of year 10. She got a year 10 certificate. So and I was just hanging on for dear life, trying to just show up. If I just continue to show up 2 days a week, maybe they won't throw me out and I'll continue on my scrape through. One other thing that my school did, all of us year 10s kids, they sent us off to work experience. Some went to local hairdressers, some went to mechanic shops, some went to the local council. For me, I believe that they thought really carefully about who I was and, maybe probably sat around the office going, what about Kylie? Really disengaged. She's a nice kid. Who knows? I'm just imagining what they would have been saying. But they sent me to the Department of Aboriginal Affairs and I didn't have any clothes. I was a poor kid. I was lucky to have a pair of socks on. We used to get around in my little trackies. I never wore a uniform, all that sort of stuff. In my school, we didn't really wear uniforms anyway, only if you wanted to. But gave me a $50 voucher, gave me a Metro 10 travel pass for those that remember the little passes. And they encouraged me to go to this work experience. And I guess around the same time as Kathy believing in me, I went and got my deadly clothes, went to Marrickville Metro,
Love it.
went to Kmart, got these clothes, put them on. My mum burst into tears. My mum Denise was still alive at this point. She burst into tears and told me how much I looked like my mum Millie because my mum Millie used to go to work. And naturally, I wanted to make her proud. So jumped on the bus from Waterloo. I had panic attacks all the way to the city. I was freaking out, And the only time I'd go to the city as if I was up to no good. But here I was dressed like a professional thinking, who the hell do I think I am? Heading into the city. And I walked into this building and it was a big flash building. All the morning commuters were there. It was like something out of a movie. I can still see the
Yeah.
movie playing. It was like something out of the Twilight Zone. But I walked in, and I had this feeling come over my body, and I freaked out. And I went home to my mum, and I stayed the whole day. I went home to my mum, and I said, "Mum, there's black fellas in the city, and they're dressed real flash." I had no idea that they were Aboriginal. We call them, we call each other blackfellas. I had no idea there were blackfellas in the city. Linda Burney,
Mhm.
Gabriella, all these people and they're doing jobs. Because all I could
Wow.
see around me was the chaos
Wow.
and the sadness and the poverty. And,
Gosh.
mum did it tough, Sometimes we didn't have hot water, food, electricity. We'd go to the
Mm.
salvos for food hampers and all that. But
Gosh.
anyway, the good news story out of that one, which I'll wrap up, is that on day 3, they called I went 3 days in a row. It was a miracle. They called my school and said, "Oh my God, Kylie's amazing. Can we keep her for another week? Our receptionist has fallen ill. She's running this big switchboard. She's doing all of our family history stuff." And they were just like, "Keep her." Well, I think that's what they would have said. And I stayed there for 2 weeks and they wrote me the most beautiful letter that I still have. And they said, Kylie, go back to school. You could work here one day, bub. And I did just that. So got my HSC, got all these units, came first and second in all of my subjects, realized that I was smart. I was going home teaching all of my community about Aboriginal histories, culture, sitting around the card school with my nan and all the old girls, teaching them stuff that we knew we were Aboriginal, but we didn't know. Everyone was failed the opportunity to learn. So I became a teacher from a very young age, already the community babysitter and all the rest of it. But my life started to take a turn and I do a lot of workshops now with kids who are similar to me. I was brave enough to share my yarn at a Hislo meeting many years ago and I heard everyone talking about these kids and having no hope or faith. And I remember the first time I found my voice to actually say, hey, do you know what? That was me and someone
Really
believed
beautiful.
in me. But anyway, there's
And
heaps of yarns.
gosh, Kylie, there's very few times where I actually don't know what to say. Um, and I think there's so much in your story, and I'm just frantically writing things down here. My desk is full of post-it notes, and you would have been carrying some things at a young age that no child should have to carry. And it's so I don't even know if I'm asking a question here or making a statement, but I think about the level of responsibility you had at such a young age is absolutely mind-blowing to me. And I, as someone, my wife is Indian South African, and some of my fondest memories are sitting with her mum and her stepdad and talking to them about what their life was like. And they obviously lived through apartheid in South Africa, which was horrific. And for me, like it's really hard as someone who has never been told they can't do something to be able to even sort of comprehend what you're talking about and what that was like. But I don't know if there's a question in there, but I think what you were carrying at such a young age is was incredible. And to think that you have the strength and the perseverance and the tenacity to get yourself out of that is incredible. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that? Like I said, I don't know if there's a question in there, but you shouldn't have been carrying that, but yet you were, and there was an incredible strength there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I've always been someone that's been a little problem solver, someone who, even though all that was going on,
Entrepreneur.
from an entrepreneur, from the age of 11, I was the community babysitter. I was hustling and negotiating to, I lived in this big block of housing commission flats, and I would babysit and hustle people and save up and negotiate for things like a wardrobe and even a beautiful little pink TV one time. And I was, I saw a lot of like really horrible things as well growing up. When I think about some of the things that I witnessed and saw in my community, I, as a mother, I'm so grateful that, my kids didn't have to see that. But at the same time, it's built the character in me. It's built me to be
Mm,
a really strong and resilient woman. And I mean, that was only the beginning of the journey, to be honest. Like life has continued to turn upside down to like, I had a near death experience when I was 17. I also inherited sort of a similar life-threatening heart condition from my mum, which was I believe triggered by binge drinking and drug use and all the rest of it. And I've actually had an internal cardiac defibrillator for the last 20 years. I've had I'll continue to get these heart surgeries. My battery's lasting longer every time they change it now. But I literally have a device inside me. The wires are screwed into my heart. People go, Kylie, how are you doing all this work? What you're doing? And I guess, I don't know, I always thought to myself that if someone else can do it, then so can I. And probably one of the biggest challenges, and I am resilient. People that know me and know all the little bits of my story, I've lost so many people, from both my mums, a sister, a best friend, my nan, my mum, and then even I met the love of my life straight after school, and things started to go well for me. I became a mum at 19, and I thought, great, life's going to start being kind to me. And sadly, he passed away, when my kids were 7 and 3. I became a single mum. So I've just been this little fighter. I've just done things that weren't written for me, and I've just tried to break cycles and challenge the system,
yeah.
challenge God, the universe, whatever is out there, going, that's not the life I want. I want better than that, And I realized that there were certain things that I had to do, and it was around finding my resilience, having choice, but obviously putting in the work. I've been a dreamer. And there's like, I run workshops now with kids, I run workshops with teachers based on some of the things that I've applied to my
Yeah.
life. And I don't know, I've just refused to surrender
It's
to
it's
stuff.
incredible.
You know?
It really is incredible. And I was having a conversation a little while ago with the phenomenal Mundanara Bales. And I know
Oh, my
that
sister girl. Yes.
yeah, I know that you know each other quite well. And we were having this conversation and we are talking about like and I want to get this right, and I'll put the link to the podcast in the show notes, but we're talking about the notion of grandparents. And she
Mm.
said, that's just not a notion that I'm familiar with, because in many Indigenous communities, people are dying so young. And I just had this moment where I was like, I've never thought about that, because my experience is sitting around the dinner table, learning these incredible lessons from grandparents and sharing stories. And she said that just doesn't happen in the majority of Indigenous homes. And I really shocked me. And this idea of like passing on these incredible stories of resilience and innovation and entrepreneurship and incredibly proud culture and lineage. It's not something that happens naturally, is it? It's something that you have to be really intentional about. And it's awful and really, really terrifying. And I think, Kylie, thank you honestly for your bravery in sharing that story, because it is beautiful. And I think the other question I'd love to ask as a follow-up is, how important was it for you as a young person to see people that you could relate to, that looked like you, that walked like you, that talked like you, doing great things? Because it's one thing for me to go into a community and say you should do this, this, and this, but my lived experience is completely different. So how important was that for you to see people from your community, from your culture, actually doing these incredible things? Because you really did break a lot of norms and you really did pave your own way in many respects. But was there anyone that you could look to for those examples back then?
You know what? Like, not really, honestly, not until, I mean, obviously I've got so much respect for my mum who raised me,
Yeah,
and I guess I was just born into trauma. You know what I mean? I was born
yeah,
into generational trauma. Like I've got yarns that I can share from her experience, from my nan. And I was lucky to have, and you mentioned grandparents, I was lucky to have my nan in my life. She was my best friend. I had her in my life
yeah.
when I was 16. And you're like, I still freak out. And similar to Mandanara, I forget that people have parents, like my age, that have parents. I like have a mother, have a grandmother. Like both of my kids, like they don't have grandparents. So that's weird and sad, as Aboriginal people. Like I think my daughter was 7 when my other mum who raised me passed away. So she remembers her nanny, but she gets really sad as well, like she's got friends that go visit their nan and it's not right. So just touching on that one,
Yeah.
like it is massive, the grief, the loss, that how normal it is, for our people to die young and all those sorts of things, like I had my birth mum was 28. I had a sister pass away at 30. My other mum, who I thought was 70 or 80, passed at 49, 59. My nan, who I thought was 100, was 64. So
That's
just on the
young.
grandparent stuff. But look, I don't know, there was no one really, and apart from, there was no one really telling me. I just had to decide for myself, and I just, it was just surrounded by a lot of chaos, like my mum loved me. But also, when I think about her experience, she had a traumatic, just a bit of a strained relationship with her mother as well, because they never learnt how to love and kind of, like saying I love you or all those sorts of things kind of wasn't, part of normal
Mm.
life, or just seeing the role models and things like that, like, so I guess I did see a lot of chaos, in our house. We always had an open door policy, big mobs of people there, but in terms of role models, at our school, and it is important for us to see people that look like us or people that from our own cultural background. And even when, you say look like us, like if I didn't own a mirror, I would think that I was just as black as my beautiful nan who raised me, and she was a real dark woman. And it's important that we see success and that we highlight the fact that we come in many different shades and colors, and we've got all these different jobs and everything. And I think what education still today is good at doing is highlighting the athletes, the football players, and because a lot of our mob do succeed in the footy field, and I'm a big fan of footy. Go the South Sydney Rabbitohs. I love all that sort of stuff, but we have to show our kids
There's
that we
more than
are
that.
everywhere. We are the authors, like I'm a successful author, I'm a business owner, I'm a homeowner, I'm creating intergenerational wealth for my children. Like I broke cycles 16 years ago and bought my own house as a single mum. And that was after working at St. George Bank for 6 years, helping everybody else, knew what I had to do. And I'm like, I want that. At one stage, I was just dreaming about getting my own housing commission place, and now both of my kids are homeowners, believe it or not, 20 and 24. They're like, well, if someone else can do it, then so can we. And
Yeah,
others in the community going, well, if Anika Kai can do it and Tyrell can do it and Alira can do it, then so can I. So
yeah.
we just need to break those cycles, and we need to highlight all the deadly people, which is why I'm a teacher. I'm out there working with our kids. I'm in schools running workshops, highlighting the fact that if someone else can do it, then so can we, and really inspiring the
I
hearts
love
and
that.
minds too. And so it is important. I didn't have that. And I don't know. To me, like my life is a bit of a miracle, to be honest. There's a book and it's called A Course in Miracles. There's a beautiful quote in that course that says, and one of our director colleagues shared this quote with me many years ago. She said it reminded her of me, and it just says, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say, and to whom? So I
Wow.
live my life by this now, and I'm like, I always talk to my old people, my ancestors, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? And I'm out there now working in Aboriginal communities, doing
I
this
love
really
that.
important work with educators, with community, with our kids who are starting to believe in themselves. We're
Mm.
focusing on healing.
It's
They
beautiful.
want to hear about my story, just little old me, little old Kylie Captain all the way from Waterloo. They want to hear. And I'm just like, I still have this a bit of imposter syndrome going, well, I'm not that deadly. Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, our kids need to see people that come from everyday communities just like them, that haven't made it in the sporting fields and all the rest of it, that we can just have a rich
Mm.
and fulfilling life doing the things that we
I love
felt.
that. So, Kylie, how do you, and this is just parenting advice now. I'm
Yeah.
sure when my kids are in their 20s, like yours are, I'll phone you again and ask for advice. But how do you build that resilience in your own kids? Because of the amazing decisions that you've made and the things that you've overcome, they will never have to tread through some of the horrific paths that you have. They will undoubtedly have their own challenges, but how do you build that resilience in your own kids? Because they could just relax. Mum's done it all. But how
Yeah.
do you do that?
Exactly. And they've both been hustling, like my daughter only left
I
school
love that.
3 years ago. She's been working hard. She saved up so much money, got jobs, and it's only still new, that she's recently bought herself a one-bedroom apartment.
Amazing.
But it's like, I don't know, like I just, and they also did it tough. They lost their dad when they were seven
Yeah.
and three, and they've grown up with the loss of lots and lots of family. And my daughter often, she hasn't described me like this for a long time, but I remember at one point she described me as someone with toxic positivity. I'm just always positive. I'm just, and I'm a big believer, and I don't care, people might think I'm crazy. I'm a big believer in the law of attraction. I use the power of my mind to see the success that I want. I've inspired my kids to do the same. We'd sit around journaling. I've created these dream big journals
Love that. Love
with
that.
goal setting prompts, journaling. I've created vision boards with my kids, getting them to say, to see and know that they can do anything, and that life will, and this the same lessons I share with my own kids are the same lessons I share with every kid that will listen to me, that life will get tough. And I think the reason why I decided to write books, and I've written 3 books now. I wrote a motivational book for teens with my son that I
Okay.
published at the
Yeah.
Sydney Opera House this year.
You've had a busy year, you
I've had
have.
a
I
busy
follow
year.
you on Instagram and I'm like, I
Yeah.
thought my week was busy, and then I see you. Yeah.
It's been busy, but I don't know. I'm just like, I know how precious life is. I know
Yeah.
how precious life is. And my mum, or my mum who raised me always had fear about, history repeating itself, and she'd have some drinks and get a bit charged up. And she was always scared about me turning 28 because that's when my birth mum passed. And she put
Gosh.
that fear in me, so I'm thinking, oh God, am I going to die at 28 as well? So, I'm like, I'm 44 in February. On the 4th of Feb, I have my birthday, and I get so excited about birthdays. And I don't know. I've just always told my like how precious life is, that we need to be present. And it's not all about chasing dreams or chasing material things. Because I like nice stuff now. I've built my dream house. I've traveled all around the world. I've bought investment properties. I'm doing it all. I've got doctors and lawyers that rent houses off me, little Kylie from Waterloo, you know. But I just say to my kids, like, chase your dreams, if you want the nice stuff and the experiences and all the rest of it. But we also have to be in the moment. We have to, like, just
Yeah.
put our energy into gratitude, because our minds often play tricks on us. And it happens for them, it happens for everyone.
I love that.
When we think about what we don't have, and it can get, we just spiral into fear. And I write about a lot of this fear of
Yeah.
judgment, fear of
Yeah.
failure, fear of success. So fear will always, and I continue to work on myself, and I tell my kids, to do the same as well. We have to look after ourselves. So it takes work because I am so programmed. I'm made up of fear. I'm a product of intergenerational trauma. When you think about
Yeah.
the amount of grief, all the crap that I've been through, like sometimes I'm riddled with fear, but I'm also an intergenerational survivor of my old people and the longest living survivor in culture in the world. So I tap into that, and that's what I've given to my kids. And if they remember anything that I've taught them, that's what they need to remember.
And that's incredible. It really is. And I'm so inspired, Kylie, with your story, and I'm a huge fan of your work, and I'll make sure I put links to where people can get copies of your amazing work and sign up for workshops in the show notes. And it's really inspirational because I know the vast majority of people from whatever background wouldn't have been able to turn something which was so challenging. There was beauty in it, but also so challenging, and to really do some of the things that you've done. So it's incredible. And for students to be able to see somebody, like I said, that looks like them, that sounds like them, that understands them, and actually showing people that you can make a choice and you can empower yourself is is incredible. And Kylie, there's educators listening to this all over the world, some of which will be familiar with our rich and diverse culture in Australia, and others that would not be. But thinking about Australian educators at the moment, what can we do as non-Indigenous teachers and also Indigenous teachers to just to do a better job of telling that story? Because sometimes it's really hard. And
Yeah.
to be perfectly honest, um, I have a go, but I just don't want to get it wrong. Do you have any advice on how we can do a better job to have those conversations? Because I'm very well aware that I am a guest in this country. I was not born here, it's my home. But I also want a good job, do a good job of telling others about our history, about the history of this great nation. So we do a
Well,
better
this
job.
is stuff that I teach a lot. I'm working with educators everywhere, I'm out in our communities working with our kids. And I think if I can sum up in just a couple of little tips, I just think to have a go, to learn,
Mm,
to relearn, to unlearn, like go back and, educate yourself and learn with the kids, like and learn in by reading books, by having these conversations, by watching documentaries, importantly, getting out to community events, like come and witness firsthand, some of the strength and the things that are happening in our communities. Come along to Yarbin, which is our biggest celebration on Survival Day every year, the 26th of January, in at Victoria Park. We have 40 to 50,000 people come every year. And there's no drugs, there's no alcohol. Yes, the media will zoom in on the angriest Aboriginal face and show the protest because there is a march from Redfern because this is still unceded land. We are sad about land rights and everything that was taken from us and a lot of the misconceptions, So I just think go and educate yourself, and I think we can't blame our own education, and I think that's what a lot of people do. They go, well, I didn't learn that at university or I didn't learn it at school. I just think to be a good educator, we're lifelong learners. Go and learn one book, one yarn at a time. Go back and get comfortable. Teach that to the kids. You
mm,
don't have to be the expert. You can say, I read this book from Kylie Captain or this crazy, had a yarn with her or read a book from Thomas Mayo or from anyone, like just to get uncomfortable. I do a lot of PL, with
you
Kathy Burgess on pedagogy, curriculum, storytelling, belonging, relationships, everything. But then once they've heard from me as well, I'm like, I'm just one voice. There is a big, wide, diverse culture and people out there. So just go and learn. So I host an Excellence in Aboriginal Education community now that
yeah,
schools sign up to. And then I bring along, so I'm then the host and bring them lots of different perspectives and educational resource hubs. And I think when I speak to my old people, and I sit and listen, I learn all the time, from people like Uncle Bob Morgan and people that inspire me. And I say, what would you like me to tell these educators, because my mum used to say, go on, Kylie, you know how to talk to them white fellas, you go and tell them. So I still ask my old people, what do you want me to tell them, And they could just tell them to have a go. Tell them that we want them to have a go and that word sorry is there for reasons. I think
I
get
love that.
excited about it. Teach with passion, with purpose. Get creative. It doesn't have to be all doom and gloom. Yes, the truth is sad, but there's a rich and beautiful
Mm,
history that you could be teaching. Look at all of our events throughout the
I love
year.
that.
Look at all of our people. Just find creative ways. So look at your Aboriginal content the way that you would look at any other exciting topic and allow your mind to wander. Or if you're unsure, there's Aboriginal education teams out there, there's groups. People are always messaging me. I'm always happy to respond. And I've got whatever, just have a yarn. If you're unsure, just have a go and get excited about it. And there's a lot to learn,
I
and we're not
love
going to change it overnight. But I think, firstly, I think always keeping it at the forefront of our heart, build empathy, because if we teach it, our energy is contagious in which we teach, and if I'm teaching mathematics, if I'm teaching English to young people, I love being in the classroom. If I'm not into it, the kids pick up on it,
Oh
And
yeah,
whereas I would start every lesson with a yarn, get excited. If I'm teaching about area, I share a quick yarn. Guess what? I have to turf my backyard and we're going to, just share yarns. Like, just, I don't know, get excited about it because otherwise classrooms and teaching is boring. It doesn't always have to be boring and sad and with our histories and
yeah.
cultures. Yes, teach the truth and teach it with respect, but also celebrate the richness and the beauty of it as well.
Kylie, your enthusiasm for this late in the evening is really admirable. And I've just got a couple more questions. I do want to be respectful of your time, and I'm so grateful that you'll take the time to talk to me today. Looking ahead, what are some of your hopes for the future for Aboriginal education leadership in Australia?
So those that have engaged with me, and I speak to a lot. I'm speaking at a lot of principal conferences these days and, working. But I guess my hopes, and I have a little bit of a saying, and I say collectively, let's never allow another cohort of students, whether we're Aboriginal or not, to go through our education system. And we strive to be one of the best in the world. But collectively, let's never allow another cohort of students to go through our system not knowing the truth of our history and the rich and beautiful culture.
I
So
love
my hopes is that we're just going to have an educated and respectful nation of people that just get it. There's going to be no more blaming the teachers, because I'm always sticking up for these teachers.
it. Yeah.
I'm sticking up for them all the time. I'm like, it's just, I hope that I'm out of work. I honestly hope that I'm never even having these conversations in the future,
Okay.
that if we all just get it right, we can be inspired by the work of other countries, such as, Canada and New Zealand. I've been to those countries. I've studied what they do. Let's just get back to the heart and just do what's right. Like, it's actually not rocket science really, but my hope, obviously, along with that, is that we see, we've been talking about close the gaps for years, but that we're just seeing the success. I want to see our kids thriving. I want to see our kids being entrepreneurs. I want to see the kids being the writers of their destinies and creating their own jobs that aren't even here yet, but being creative and finding solutions that can benefit them, their families, their communities.
That's really great.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot. I'm a dreamer and I'm always dreaming up
You got to
things
be.
I want to see. And I'm excited about the future, honestly, with incredible leaders and people like you and the many others out there that are doing this important work. I really believe that we're going to have a bright future. I'm going to see our people living longer, our people
Yeah.
not being
Love that.
incarcerated, the suicide rates going down, and we're just not even talking about it. It's not even in our vocabulary. It's how we are.
Yeah. Kylie, you've raised a number of points in our chat today that could have been whole podcast series or whole books in themselves. And I'm so grateful. And as I said, I'll put links to everything, ways to get in touch with you in the show notes. And just a final closing question. If I was sitting down with you, I was just about to step into the classroom for the first time. I've just graduated from uni. I'm naive, I'm excited, I'm optimistic. What would be some advice that you'd give me?
I would give you the advice, firstly, to be you, to allow the kids to see the humanness of you. Yes, we have to be a teacher, we have to have that authority and all the rest of it, but to take your whole self into the classroom, just like we want our kids to bring their whole self into through those school gates. To be brave, to create a fun and learning and welcoming environment for our kids, to really listen, to take the time to practice deep listening and sit down and actually learn what deep listening is about. It's
I love that.
listening wholeheartedly. And importantly, remember that beautiful quote, that they'll always remember how you made them feel. So take those moments to believe in them, kids. Really allow them to see. If you're giving feedback when they're doing a great job, allow them to feel your energy. Allow them to just to feel how proud you are. If you're just, to bring like your energy into the
Mm,
space, and know that you don't have to know it all, learn with the kids, be honest and open. And I don't know, there's a lot.
I love that.
But I just think,
Yeah,
relationships first,
yeah,
always.
I love it. Kylie, it has been an absolute joy and a privilege to get to talk to you this evening. And I can't thank you enough. And I'm really, really grateful for the work that you're doing and truly thankful that we got to have this conversation. It's been a while in the making, but thank you for the work that you're doing. It's really, really valuable and I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I love your work and keep it up. And you are making a difference as well. So never forget that. Thanks,
Thank
bro.
you.